I want you to forget everything you know about mattress retail conferences because we are so excited here at the FAM to announce Sleep Summit 2023, our new flagship event. If you're at your computer right now, I want you to go to sleepsummit.co. So sleepsummit.co. You're going to get all the details. It's happening October 9th through the 12th in beautiful Bentonville, Arkansas. That's my backyard. And Sleep Summit is built for forward-thinking mattress retailers and furniture retailers who are hunting for ways to make more money, increase profits from big ideas, people who want to optimize their business with AI and automation and new tools. It's for mattress retailers that really need to train their teams to massively grow their sales. And it's for leaders who really need space from the day-to-day to strategize and reflect. This is going to be dynamic presentations. We're going to have engaging breakout sessions, innovative group activities. I want you to block your calendar right now, October 9th through the 12th for Sleep Summit 2023. It's going to be a one-of-a-kind experience. You don't want to miss it. I promise you don't want to miss it. So tickets are available right now. The early bird special is going on. Okay, the prices are going to go up after July 31st, so don't wait. Get your entire team there. Go to sleepsummit.co right now, and we'll see you at Sleep Summit 2023.
Fam.news.
Welcome to the Sleep Summit Show, where we uncover bold ideas with innovators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders making waves in the sleep industry. With your host, Mark Kinsley.
He is a podcast host in the upper echelon, the top 0.5% of all podcasts on the planet. Michael Unbroken is on the show today. He talks about childhood trauma, practical tools and advice for how to overcome it. And we're going to talk about sleeping as well. The Sleep Summit Show begins right now.
If I won't have it in my house, I won't deliver it to yours. I truly live by that. The Englander collection fits in perfect with that. It's one of the best products, mattress-wise, that I have sold. My $2,000 Englander is somebody's $5,000 bed in another retail store. To any retailer out there, you should really look at Englander and get them on the floor today.
Learn more and get started today at englander.com.
Dude, what's up? I'm excited to be here with you.
Michael, welcome to the show. Now, I got to give us a little backstory. So you and I actually met through a sleep industry event because I was, well, not necessarily a sleep industry event, but I was at Matt Smith's event. We were both speaking. And so I got to hear you speak on stage and tell your story. And I was like, I've got to get you on the podcast because the people you help and the message you deliver and how it has an impact on people's lives, there is a connection to sleep because people that experience trauma in their lives are having to lay down on their pillow every night with a lot of times really heavy hearts and heads. Tell people your story before we jump into it.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're definitely spot on. I always say this when I start these is like, if you're listening, please don't compare yourself to me. We did not have the same journey. So the high level, my mom was a drug addict and alcoholic. In fact, when I was only 4 years old, she cut off my right index finger. And people always talk about hurt people. And so she was very much that. My stepfather, super abusive. I mean, this dude was 6'4", 220, freaking linebacker size dude beating up a 7-year-old, so put me in the hospital multiple times. And, we were deeply in poverty. And I lived with over 30 different families between 8 to 12 years old, getting bounced around place to place to place. And I never knew where I was going to end up, whether it was a family member, or a friend of the church, a stranger, a cousin, sometimes a van. Like I really didn't know. And luckily when I was 12, my grandmother adopted me. But I'm biracial, black and white, and she's an old racist white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. So imagine the identity crisis. And like any normal 12 years old, I just started getting high every day, started drinking when I was 13, got expelled and kicked out of school when I was 15 for selling drugs, got put into a last chance program, got kicked out again, did not graduate high school. In fact, went to summer school. They gave me the diploma and said, we'll let the streets figure you out. And at that same time, I got fired from a warehouse job where I was just like literally putting microchips into motherboards all day long, probably because I was stoned. And I was sitting in my car. I was like, I'm going to find the solution for this, for poverty, for homelessness, for abuse. And Mark, at the time, I thought it was money. So I said, by the time I'm 21, I want to make $100,000 a year legally. And so I just chased money legally because I had family in prison for life. I've been in handcuffs more times than I can count. And my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. So, dude, like I knew the path I was going down. And so I just kept learning skills, and skills have utility. And next thing you know, I'm 21. I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company. By the time I was almost 26, I made just under $1 million. But I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, cheating on my girlfriend, $50,000 in debt. My car got repoed, and my little brother said, never talk to me again. 13 years later, here I am talking to you.
13 years later. I got to dig into some aspects of your story. What happened when your mother cut your finger off? Was she high? Was she angry? What happened? Do you remember that moment?
I don't remember that moment, Mark. People ask me that question a lot. I have no idea. And so what I have a multitude of different stories, one from my grandmother, from my mother, they're both dead. So I don't really have confirmation. I tried to actually, here's what's interesting. 8 or 9 years ago, I reached out to the Hand Institute of Indianapolis where I had the surgeries, and they expunge all physical documentation. So I have no idea.
So you had a childhood filled with trauma, and that even extended into your teen years and beyond, because like you said, there you were, you figured out how to make $1 million legally, but then you hit a major trough in your life again because you weren't healthy, you weren't happy, you were clearly still in a bad spot. Was that the impetus for you to start to try and figure out, how do I get past this trauma? How do I beat this?
Well, I was at this massive rock bottom, man. I had made all this money, and yet as I explained, life was very chaotic. And you know how when people are dying, they're like, I feel like I have like a year left. They're like, I got like 6 months left. I got like a week left. Man, Mark, I just knew I was going to be dead. Either I was going to follow through finally on killing myself and, or somebody was going to kill me, or I was going to end up in prison, right? Like I just felt it. And the reality is, one day it was like a Saturday morning, and I'm laying in bed watching the freaking CrossFit games, smoking a joint and eating chocolate cake. And I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I picked myself up and I went in the bathroom, and, and I'll always say this, I don't know that this would work for everyone, but this worked for me. I just destroyed myself. I was like, you are a fucking loser. You are doing this. This is your fault. The reason your life is a disaster is because of the way that you're showing up. Your own brother won't talk to you. Your girlfriend hates you. Look at your life. You are doing this. No one else has done this but you. And I realized in that moment, Mark, it was like, I wasn't culpable for the bad things, man. Like all the chaos of childhood, all of the hurt, the pain, the suffering, like that's not on me, dude. It's just not. It's not on anybody. But every single one of these decisions I was making every day, like, bro, that's on me. And I asked myself a question as I looked in that mirror. I was like, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the answer was no excuses, just results. And I literally meant it. And so I started this journey of, it was therapy and coaching and all the different modalities of things that one can step into, and reading books and going to conferences. And podcasts weren't really a thing then, but I was like listening to online shows and being studious and getting mentorship and just going down this path because I was like, I felt like I owed it to me. I still feel like I owe it to me. It's like, I've already been through hell, so why can't I understand, or why can't I experience, or why not have this other thing that I saw other people having? And it was confidence and self-love and compassion and empathy. And it was like, I'm going to figure this out.
It's a powerful moment whenever you look in the mirror, like you said, and you trashed yourself, but you ultimately, on the other side of that, said, I'm responsible for these things. I think at the get together where we went to, which was the Undercover Billionaire Boot Camp where we both spoke, I remember Joseph Blair, coach for the Wizards, saying, I control my effort. And it sounds like you had that moment where you said, I control my effort in these things.
Yeah. And it was like, I had been really good at destroying my life. And I was like, what if I did the opposite? And Mark, that's really what it came down to, man. It's like there's so much potential we all have inside of us, but you have to be willing to face the fear of shedding the identity of the person you are today to become the person that you're capable of being. And then that shit was hard. Like for real hard. Like I had to go through this process of like really understanding and identifying not only the things that led me to this place of being stuck, but when I faced fears and what it meant to become a man, and then what it meant to be a leader, and then what it means now to be a public figure. And so much of it, man, is just like ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, am I doing the thing I said I was going to do? It's about accountability and integrity and honesty. And you hear this a lot, but dude, the truth will set you free. Like it really fucking will. And I know that's such this like ad lib people pull out all the time, but man, when I started getting serious about therapy and coaching and I was sharing the darkness, things that are so insane, like people don't even believe it. When I started sharing those things, man, I just felt a sense of freedom. I just felt like, man, I don't have to carry this anymore. And in fact, it really, one of the pivotal things that I did, and I think this audience will appreciate it, I asked Gary Vaynerchuk for help. I mean, if you go back to like 10 years ago, I'm on an episode of Ask Gary V, and I'm just like, dude, help, something, anything. And it was like that's the thing that people have to understand. It's like, I did not do this alone, and neither will you.
If you're not familiar, Michael Unbroken, here on the show right now, entrepreneur, best-selling author, coach, one of the top podcasters on the planet. He's a speaker. He's an advocate for survivors of childhood trauma. And I just want people listening here on the Sleep Summit show to understand something. Why Michael? Why now? Why his story? Because people that are coming in looking for a better night's sleep, many of them have experienced childhood trauma. Many of them can be a support system for somebody who's trying to get beyond it. When you think about sleep as a child, what comes to your mind? What are the things that come to your mind?
Well, as a kid, it was impossible. Like really impossible. I mean, we didn't even own a bed. I slept on a concrete floor for most of my childhood. And then when you add in the lack of stability, getting bounced around place to place to place, dude, I had the most massive insomnia. I mean, from basically 7 or 8 years old until I was about 32, until I really started to like research sleep and understand like circadian rhythms and get myself into this place where I had somewhat of a sleep health routine at night. I mean, there were nights where I'd sleep for an hour if I was lucky. The slightest noise would wake me up because it's hypervigilance, right? Like a lot of really dark things happened to me as a kid in my sleep, as it happens to a lot of children, unfortunately. And so it was like there was never any safety. Sleep is, I really truly believe this. I bet with everything you've done, you would probably agree. If you want to actually be able to sleep, you need to feel safe. And so I never had that until I became an adult. And now it's very different, right? And then I think the other part of it as a kid too was like not having familiarity, not having my own bed, not having my own place. And that lack of leads to this place where you're just unsettled all the time, right? And so I was like backpack, here I'm at this house, here I'm at that house, here I'm at this hotel room, like whatever it was. So I think it's, giving people an opportunity to have a comfortable sleep experience that feels safe is everything, right? I mean, so now I do the whole blue light shit and like an hour no phone and read and red lights and PEMF mats, and I'm probably overdoing it to be honest with you. But dude, last night I went to bed at 9:15. I slept 8 straight hours. I feel great.
Hallelujah. I love that. That's a great testimonial, man. And that, I know that journey a little bit. It's different for everyone, but going from being a terrible sleeper and not feeling safe and not having a place that feels familiar to then investing in trying to make those changes and make those habits stick, it is a tough putt. It is not easy to do, and it takes that consistency over time. So it sounds like when you turned 32, you said you started investing and trying to figure out some of the things that weren't going well in your life, and then sleep became a part of that.
So, I mean, I'd already been deep into this work at that point for 6 or 7 years, but the sleep thing wasn't until like I started listening to podcasts where people are talking about sleep being this very important element of the human experience, arguably more important than nutrition, depending on who you're asking, right? And so I was like, oh, this is the one thing I've really always had struggles with. And I was like, okay, I need to wrap my head around this, especially with the travel schedule, with the businesses that I run, etc. I was like, okay, cool. Let me figure out how to actually do this. I mean, it's still a challenge sometimes, you know. So it's like going through the routine, having the stability, but most importantly, it was about educating myself. Nobody teaches you about sleep when you're a kid, when you're a teen in college and 20s. Like you don't know how to, people are just like, well, I guess it's time to go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning after you've been playing video games all night. It's like, good luck with that. Right. And that's what I did forever. And then I had no circadian rhythm because one night I'd go to bed at, 3 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. And the next night I'd go to bed at 9 and wake up at 5, and the whole thing. And so a lot of it became about diligence and discipline, along with education, and then finding the right things for me. And it's like, I mean, dude, even like the right firmness of a mattress and the right firmness of a pillow, and completely blackout curtains, and whether I'm using sound machines or whatever that was. So, I mean, so much of it has just been like finding what works for me, and realizing like a big part of it is like protecting that energy every night.
Did you have any guides along the way, or did it mainly come from listening to podcasts and picking up tips from some of those shows?
No, I think honestly, dude, it all came from just podcast and then trial and error. There were guys like, I wish I would have known about you back then. That probably helped a lot. But there were guys like Peter Attia and Ben Greenfield, and these guys talked about sleep a lot. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and like thinking about what I was learning from those people and just trying it.
Yeah, sometimes it is that self-experimentation, and it's hard to trust it sometimes because there's so much noise out there, and you try to cut through the clutter and find the good science. It seems like when I've distilled down a lot of the sleep advice that I've read in books and gotten from people on the show after more than 500 episodes, two things do stand out, and it sounds like you're doing them really well. One of them is a bedtime routine, and the other is early sunlight. So the first thing when you get up in the morning, if you can get outside and get into the sunlight, it starts to set your circadian clock for later that day. And it actually gives you a little cortisol release, which in the amount that it releases based on the sunlight you get early in the day is a positive amount. A lot of people associate cortisol with stress. Overproduction of cortisol is stress inducing, or it actually relates to stress. And then the second thing is the bedtime routine. So early daylight sunlight, and then bedtime routine means two things. You have a bedtime, and then you have a routine that leads up to that to signal to your body, this is what we're going to do. And so many hormones and all this positive stuff gets released within the first 90 minutes. And if you miss your bedtime by plus minus an hour, you actually miss like an HGH release, which is really good for fitness people that want to build muscle. So it sounds like you've experimented with some of that stuff to get yourself to a good spot.
Yeah, and even like I'll rip open the curtains as soon as I wake up, and I hate it, dude, but I'm like, I know this is good for me. Like, so there's that in the morning, but then I think just the general morning routine as well, making sure that I'm hydrating, making sure I work out every day, working really hard. Like one of the things that if I want a good night's sleep, I have to work. If I'm just chilling around, not doing shit all day, then at, my bedtime, I'm just like wide awake. The other thing I'll say probably has helped me more than anything is, so I will have red lights in the bedroom, and I will journal at night and read a book about half an hour before bed. And like, sure enough, like I'm like, cannot wait to go to sleep 10 pages into a book.
Yeah, that's actually one of my routine things too, is I never read fiction. I never read nonfiction because it can put your brain into the mode of trying to solve problems or apply what you're reading. Whereas if you read a story, you're just kind of along for the journey. Then I love the journal thing too. I'm the same way. I'm like, hey, if something pops into my head, I gotta have a holding pen for it so I know it's there and I can deal with it tomorrow. Okay, so we get a lot of people in the mattress business that listen to this show, in the broader sleep industry. First of all, check out Michael's podcast at thinkunbrokenpodcast.com. let me start here. As a business person, entrepreneur, we get a lot of people that are running their own businesses. What does it mean to be in the top 1% of podcasters on the planet? Paint a picture of
Yeah.
what that actually means.
Yeah, it's funny because we're now in the top 0.05%. So I'm above even that. Which apologize. Sorry, I didn't know that was open. One of the things
It's like
is,
a
I mean, it's
celebration of the top 0.5%.
kind of right. Yeah, no, man, it's just been like it's a war, right? Like it kind of is. We're heading into 700 episodes. I've had the fortune of interviewing a lot of incredible human beings, and it's just been like really just proving to myself that I can. I mean, you get it. You release 500 plus episodes. It's not easy. And luckily I have a team. We built a team for the show, so it's not just me. It'd be insane if it were. I would never get done. And so the thing for me is it's just been able to help me. A lot of it, I mean, you get it, dude. It's self-serving, really. I'm like learning. I'm trying to take the best of what people know so I don't have to pay the dummy tax and get a shortcut the experiences of time. And so to have interviewed people like Tom and Lisa Bilyeu, Tim Story, Anna Lamke, Caroline Leaf, Dr. Gabor Mate, Meryl Bouquet, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, where it's like, dude, I've interviewed the most brilliant people on planet Earth, and I feel very fortunate for that. But then I've interviewed people whose names don't sit in the upper echelon of the society that we live in and whatever field you're in, and they come with the most powerful stories you can imagine. So, it's amazing just to be able to really, it's to be a storyteller, right? I mean, that's what I get to do every day.
It's a gift. It is fun when you can connect around something that you probably never would have talked about with somebody, and you can pick up the phone and call people and share their stories. You're a great storyteller too. I know you've actually had Matt Smith, who's from the mattress industry, on the podcast.
Yeah.
He has an amazing story to tell also. When you look at your business and you look at being able to tell people stories, what are some of the things that you have picked up that have been big lessons for you that maybe you've applied in your thinking or in your business or in your life from these amazing people you've had on your show?
Yeah, man, just radical vulnerability around things you've already processed. It opens up the door for other people to step into their vulnerability and to be able to process and heal. And I think without a doubt, as I look at some of the people who have sat across from me and had these conversations, the thing that is always so inspiring is like the realness. It's funny, man, I love that you asked me that question. So when I was 25-ish, I was running this photography company and I was struggling, and I was like watching Shark Tank all the time, right? I'm watching like Shark Tank, I'm watching Marcus Lemonis, I'm like watching all these people moving and shaking. Gary Vee had popped on the scene, and then like people like Marie Forleo and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, what do all these people have in common? I was like trying to put my finger, I was like, why are these people successful? And it's not and to be honest, Mark, I don't think it's about like being smart. I don't even think it's about being effective or a great leader. Like, truthfully, I don't. All these people are authentically and unapologetically them. And so when I sit across from someone and they're on the show, I get that. I get a bear witness to that in real time with some of the greatest minds in the world. And I think like that's the cornerstone to my success as well, is I'm just like, man, I'm just going to lay it out here because I know every time I do, it helps people. And I know that every time I do, it gives people permission, right? Depending on the stage I'm speaking at, depending on how much time I have, like I talk about things that people are like, I can't believe you said that. That is like the darkest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, well, one, I've already done the work around it, so it's healed. But two, there's somebody in this room who had a similar experience who's been terrified until this moment to talk about it. And then they find me after and they corner me and then they tell me their story. And I'm like, now you have the ability to step deeper into it because you cannot heal what you don't reveal.
Write that down. A friend of mine said, people connect with your vulnerabilities, not your victories. And exercising that vulnerability muscle is really tough because we want to be seen as successful. And like you said, once you open the door to that, a lot of other stuff can come out, and sometimes it can be a volcano.
Yeah, totally. But you'll learn a lot about yourself too. And one of the things that'll happen if you're really paying attention is you'll notice the people around you will change also. But also, I mean, since this is a sleep show, one of the things that happened to me is that I started sleeping better at night. Like I can really like honestly like tie those things together because it was like the more honest I was in therapy, the more honest I was in coaching, the more I was in the journal, exposing the truth of my experiences, getting the anger out, physically moving, dropping all that weight, right? I mean, I probably had like freaking sleep apnea or something, right? And it was like because of the effort of doing the work, I actually started to sleep better, and that started with the vulnerability. Like I literally can tie those two things together, man.
I can only imagine, people, what is the phrase that people say sometimes? Like, how do you sleep at night?
Yeah.
How do you sleep at night? So
Such
if
a
you're
great
holding
point.
on to something that needs to go away or something that you need to work through, how are you going to sleep at night unless you die? That's really cool. I've never heard anybody actually put it that way, that they connected the dots through having these freeing moments, being vulnerable, working through it, getting it off your chest, actually doing the deep work that actually leads to healing, and boom, I'm going to have a great night's sleep. But it seems obvious now that I say it out loud, though.
Yeah. Well, if you read a book like Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, all the information and evidence is there. You hold on to the trauma, it stays in your body. It needs to release. For whatever reason in this society, we think that it's just like mental health that we need to address, but it's our physical health too. And as you address your mental health, your physical health changes. And so it's really it's a chicken or the egg kind of situation, right? But I think you just have to kind of do both.
I think you're right. It's not just one thing. If you just over-index on trying to get buff or ripped or whatever it is, and your nutrition is awful and your sleep is awful, you're going to have a limiting effect there. Yeah, do it all. That's great, man. Well, I think in terms of doing it all, a lot of times mental health, until recently, has been left out of the equation. I think it's becoming more widely acceptable to go to therapy, to work through your stuff, to be vulnerable. I think COVID and the mental health challenges people had through that have fast-tracked that to some degree, and hopefully more people do feel it's okay to do it. I mean, I went to therapy off and on for years, and now I go once a month, whether I quote-unquote need it or not, because it's part of my wellness routine, and I don't want things to become log-jammed and then we have to throw dynamite into them, which is unhealthy.
That's right. And people wait too long because they're scared. And it's like, it's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to be a coward, man. Like, I know it's Hux. I know it's dark. I know there's a lot in there you've never even talked about that you won't even address with yourself. But man, you bring darkness to the light and it loses its power over you.
Reveal and heal, man. Hey, I got you to have you reveal something else.
Yeah.
Where's the strangest place you've ever slept?
Well, again, I kind of mentioned like being bounced around place to place. But I think honestly, like, it's not even maybe strange, but just being in a random bungalow on an island in Thailand, like during I wish I had more time to tell you the whole story, but basically I went to an island called Kompagan in Thailand. I was staying in Koh Samui. When I got on Koh Phangan, the freaking monsoon came and they stopped all the ferries. And the only place I could find was a bungalow on the beach. And it was the most terrifying night of my life because I was like, bro, I don't know if this water is going to take me with it or not.
So the water is starting to creep in and you're just hoping to keep your head under the tarp for a while, huh?
It was crazy, man. It was
That's
crazy.
wild. Well, Michael, hey, thank you for stopping by the Sleep Summit show. It was such a pleasure
brother.
to meet you whenever we got to hang out. I saw the impact that you had from stage, and sometimes people's jaws agape. And there were moments that were really hard for the audience to hear, and your vulnerability opened their hearts. And I know it's done it for millions of people all over the world. So I encourage everybody to check out your podcast at thinkunbrokenpodcast.com. Appreciate you, brother, man. It's great to see you.
Anytime, my friend. I'll see you soon.